Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CR question of the day. The CR question of the day, as you can see, is in front of you. And today we are going to spend some time on main point questions. That means we are going to read the passage and we are going to try and understand what the passage is trying to tell us through a series of questions. So today's question has 3 sub-questions based on the same passage. And let's get down to reading the question. Let me get out of your way and show you the passage and the following question. So if you notice, the first paragraph of this passage gives us some information about Maurice Duverger's The Political Role of Women, the book. Maurice Duverger has been identified as the first behaviorist and has compared women's electoral participation. He has analyzed women's patterns of voting, political candidacy, political activism in 4 European countries during the first half of the 20th century. So the point to be noted here is that this data comes from 4 countries and gives us information about the first half of the 20th century. Then the paragraph ends with, Duverger's research findings were that women voted somewhat less frequently than men. And this difference narrowed the longer women had the vote and were slightly more conservative. Now the author's main point starts from the second paragraph because the first paragraph only gives us a set of facts. Why? It says that it sets an early standard for the sensitive analysis of women's electoral activities. To Duverger's credit, his findings in the context had many historical processes. But now the point to be noted here, children, is that there is a very big roadblock. However, this changes the tone of the passage. It is a contradictory conjunction. However, means the lines before it, that means the lines on Duverger's credit, now stand cancelled or annulled. Because with however comes the main point. So the point to be noted is that wherever however occurs, you will have the main point starting from however. That tells us what the author is trying to tell us. After however, the author tells us 2 very important points, that these contexts are changing. That means whatever was true for the 20th century, the early part, is not true anymore. As a result of it, the approach was helpful, but not the actual findings. That means they are redundant. Next point is that the discussion of his findings was hampered by his failure to consider certain specific factors important to women's electoral participation. The influence of political regimes, etc. So all these things that Duverger failed to acknowledge. And finally, the author says, Duverger's study foreshadowed the enduring limitations of the behaviorist approach. Since he was the first behaviorist, we get the information that whatever Duverger did shaped the approach for later studies. So now the first question says that the passage implies that in comparing the 4 European countries, Duverger found that voting rates of women and men were mostly different. In which women? Now we have to complete the point. So this question comes from the last paragraph. First paragraph, last line. Here. Children, this is our answer here. That the longer women had the vote, the lesser was the difference. This is what we have to mark. They were not more active, right? They did not hold the most conservative views. Neither did most egalitarian relationship. It is the opposite. Yes, they possess the right to vote for the shortest time. That means the longer they had the vote, the less narrow was the difference. But if the difference was very narrow, or it was most different when they had the shortest vote. So we have been given about the longer. If they had the longest vote, longer the women had the vote, the less was the difference. But if the difference was most, longer will change to shorter. So this is like it's not like an exactly specific detailed question, but it is like an inference question that you draw from the first paragraph. So the correct answer is D.